Lorna. For the next dreary week at school, Lorna tried not to think about the strange young man, tried not to think about him, and failed. When Friday came, she tried to pretend she didn't care if he came to the library or not. But of course she cared. At 18, Lorna had never really had a date. Scotty didn't count. So she was really looking forward, hoping to see the mysterious boy again. Maybe he'd talk more this time. She wondered if he'd want that creepy book again. It was still on the shelf. She made sure of that. No one had taken it out, and the young man hadn't borrowed it. The Book of Werewolves by Sabine Baring-Gould. Lorna had looked through it, of course, and found herself both horrified and puzzled. She had never read anything like it, and she didn't believe it, any of it. Werewolves didn't exist, although some of the human monsters mentioned in the book, serial killers, certainly did. As to why the young man wanted to read it, it was silly. It was weird. But guys were like that. Or so Lorna supposed. But Friday night, the odd boy didn't come. Didn't come until the last hour, when it was already dark outside. He came right up to the desk and, staring at Lorna, said, "Where's that book?" This was so rude, Lorna was tempted, momentarily, to tell him he knew where it was and could find it himself. But instead, she stepped out from behind the desk, and together they walked in silence to the 398s, the folklore section. Lorna was in front and wondered if the young man was looking at her rear end, and if so, what he thought of it, of her. Did he like her? Maybe he was just shy. In the 398s, Lorna took the green permabound volume down from the shelf. The Book of Werewolves by Sabine Baring-Gould, she said. Once again, the young man snatched it from her and was turning away when he stopped and, looking at her intently, said, "What time do you leave here?" The library closes at 9, Lorna said. He turned away then, without another word, and, walking to a table in the back corner, sat down and began to read with total absorption. Lorna wondered why he had asked when she got off work. Was he thinking of asking her out? Still, at 10 to 9, Lorna called her dad to remind him to pick her up, and when she went to look, the young man was gone. From the Book of Werewolves by the Reverend Sabine Baring-Gould. In Roman times, a slave decided to take advantage of his master's absence to visit a girlfriend who lived in the country. A house guest, a soldier on leave, agreed to come with him. They set out in the early evening and were soon overtaken by darkness. The sides of the road were lined with tombstones, and after they had been on the road a while, the soldier excused himself to urinate. At least, that's what the slave thought he was doing. But after waiting 10 minutes for the soldier's return, he decided to see what was taking so long. The slave was amazed to see the soldier had removed all his clothes and stood naked, awash in moonlight. And then, suddenly, he turned into a great gray wolf, which howled at the night and then raced off into some nearby woods. The slave almost took to his heels, but then decided he should gather up the soldier's discarded clothes. He would need them later, if he turned back into a man. And if he didn't, the slave could always sell them. But alas, the garments had been turned to marble. Marble! The slave continued on his way and eventually arrived at the farm where Melissa was waiting impatiently. "If you had only come here sooner," she said with a degree of annoyance, "you might at least have lent us a hand." "Why? What happened?" the slave answered defensively. "A wolf broke into the barn and attacked the cattle, that's all. But it was no laughing matter for Mr. Wolf, since one of our servants managed to run him through with a pike." The slave spent the night. The next morning, on his way home, he paused at the place where the clothes had been turned to stone, but found a large pool of gore. Gore instead of the bewitched garments. The slave reached home and almost bumped into a departing guest, a local doctor looking exceedingly grave. It seems he had been called in the night to treat his master's guest, the soldier, who had returned home with a serious neck wound. "The result of some brawl," the physician croaked. "No doubt over a woman." And how is he?" the slave asked tremulously. The doctor smiled sourly. "The soldier bled to death." To be continued. If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring such cryptids as the Night Floaters, Werewolves, and the Black-Eyed Children. So again, please consider subscribing. Please help me to reach my goal of 2,021 subs in 2021. Till midnight. Cheers! Pictures used in today's video, courtesy of Pix Here, that's PX Here, while the music was that classic Ghost Processional by that patron of the internet, Kevin MacLeod.